All right, this one is called Utopian Dreams of No One Left Behind. I wrote this one a while ago, and um, it I think it's difficult to write a truly utopian story. In reality, when we write utopian stories, we usually write dystopians, where even though the world appears to be perfect, it's completely imperfect and usually tyrannical for somebody else. So I wanted to see if it was possible to write a truly utopian story, and this was my attempt at that. So this story is going to get its first edit. I don't know if it's a great story at this point, but we'll see. And this will be our last one for today. Thank you guys for hanging with me all this time. I'll tell you one more story here. Utopian Dreams of No One Left Behind. Nothing is ever perfect, River said to Dr. Caslin as he stared out her office window at the blues and purples of the nighttime cityscape. You've said that before, his therapist told him. Why do you believe that to be true? Because it is true. People still suffer depression and anxiety. Families still fall apart. Crimes are still committed. They stared at one another for a long moment. River looked away first and pretended to be interested in the lights outside. At this point, he about had them memorized. Staring out windows was sort of a defense mechanism for him. Nothing new out there. Really nothing new in here either. He had said these same things before in earlier sessions. River was starting to bore himself. Dr. Caslin broke the silence. That was new. Usually she waited on him to initiate, never forcing a solution or belief upon him. It was enough to draw his attention away from the colorful outside. There is therapy available to all who need it, as you know, of course. Humanity deals with its flaws, but we have a post-scarcity society, much superior to previous generations, not because we are better than them, but because we are so much more enlightened. Not because we are so much more enlightened, although we probably arguably are, but society as it stands now does not contribute undue pressure or hardship upon people seeking to better themselves and address their flaws. You also mentioned crime. Were you recently a victim of crime, River? He rolled his eyes and turned his attention out to the night again. Most people aren't. Let's say she continued, because I think this is still her talking. Most people aren't. There is far less of it than any other time in history, and we can address the underlying issues that cause those rare individuals to make those rare destructive choices. We don't perpetuate that behavior or cause its consequences to spread beyond our control. No, life is not perfect, but we are doing the work to make it the best it can be. So I should just stop feeling bad. Got it, doctor. You know that's not what I'm saying. You are permitted to feel any way you like, and I'm here to help you feel better as you are ready. I don't feel better, though. I feel out of place in this safe and sterile world. All healing takes time. She paused, but not long enough for him to jump back in with a new complaint. Why do you think the world feels sterile to you? What most people see as perfection, Doctor, I see as conformity. I see people falling into pre-made slots for their lives and their future without the variety to really discover who they are. I don't know who I truly am, but this is not it. He waved his hands over his body as if to emphasize this point. He wasn't sure he really understood his point, though. That's why I'm in therapy, right? He thought. You think a little more crime, starvation, or war might spice things up? He narrowed his eyes at her. Are you making fun of me? She gave him a friendly enough smile. Humor can help us deal with some of our personal pressures in life. If the humor is not directed to hurt someone, then I think it's okay. Did I hurt your feelings by somehow making light of them, River? He shook his head. Sometimes it's funny to mock other people. Folks still laugh at that sort of humor. Sure, testing the edges of appropriateness will always be funny. There is still value in the consent of the audience and the target. Of course, mocking power is a necessary check upon governmental authorities and the risk of corruption. That sort of speech is protected in our society. Do you think satire might be a good outlet for you, either in the form of comedy or prose? I don't think so. You don't have to know exactly who you are at this age, River. You don't have to have life all figured out even in your old age. People live longer now, which helps. Not having to worry about your livelihood also gives you the freedom to reinvent yourself at any time. River sighed. Dr. Caslin turned off her device. River started to get up, thinking that was it. Her, say, recording device. At least it was a fast session, although therapists didn't really stick to an exact hour anymore, but she surprised him again. Why don't we take a little field trip? The music played from everywhere, out of the purposeful darkness around the cavernous room. It wasn't too loud. It was only meant for ambience. But River hated it. He hated everything just then. She led him to the colorful wall where images and shapes danced through the electronic field. People were all smiles as the energy traveled up their arms and they explored all the possibilities afforded to them. They stopped short. The doctor smiled in her practiced, friendly way that River was growing to hate. "What are you thinking, River?" "How I hate your smile," he thought, but he said, Nothing really. I'm thinking there is nothing here for me. The purpose of this place is purpose itself. People come here to explore, to eliminate possibilities, to narrow down the paths that are right for them." River shook his head. "I think there is more going on than that." "Tell me," she said. "I think people are coming here to stop thinking. I believe the AIs, the algorithms, and the machines do the thinking for them." "You are not the only one who brings up that criticism. It is a valid point of debate. The consensus is that these tools that work based on what we bring to them. Of course, if you are worried about conformity, I can understand why you have avoided engaging here. Should we try somewhere else?" River lacked a sense of purpose and peace this place was supposed to offer, so having no better direction in mind, he went along with her to the next location. Steam rose from the pipes around them. River could imagine these dim tunnels being the lairs of monsters who lived below the city. Of course, these tunnels were dry and clean. The lights rose and fell with their passage, not leaving them in any sort of darkness. "Isn't it against the rules for us to be down here?" River cut his eyes at her. "You were leading me into a life of crime." "Very funny. You know I got permission before we arrived. Maybe you should be in comedy." "Maybe you should be in comedy." Let's italicize that. "Yeah, haha, what's the point of us being down here, permission or not? You think I should become some sort of troll living below the city? I just want you to see the options some have selected." They reached a railing and looked over. In the well-lit lower depths, a few humans worked in and among the larger robots handling the pipes and wires down here. "I didn't know any people still work these types of jobs. Is this a secret oppressed class below our supposedly perfect society?" "No, they are part of society too and live above ground just like the rest of us. They choose to work among the robots in places like this. Some are down here. Others still choose to work factory jobs. Many do this work for years, but most move on eventually." "Why are you showing me this?" "To point out that you still have options. People are constantly working on themselves. It's easier now, but it still takes time. They all have their own reasons. When they decide to move on, the robots fill back in as always." "You think I need to do some grunt work to deal with my personal demons, Doctor?" Now she shrugged. That was so much unlike her. It was more like him. She followed that uncharacteristic gesture by saying, "You have to decide what you need, but you have typo there. You have the right and ability to choose your own tools to do so. You don't have to engage anything that doesn't serve you. There are opportunities beyond the conformity you are trying to avoid." Okay, let me fix another typo there. By the time we're done here, I'll have all the typos out and people will think I'm a genius. "Well, thank you for this, Doctor, but I didn't think fitting pipes under the city in the company of robots and other misfits is going to do much for my depression." "They aren't misfits, River. They're just people choosing their own paths. If any of them complain, I'll be sure to apologize for what I said." She stared a moment and finally added, "I have one more place for us to visit, but that's up to you, as always. If you've had enough of my field trip for today, I'll let you take your leave." River was curious. It was a feeling he thought had died within him long ago, so he decided to stay on for the next stop. They emerged from the vehicle upon landing and wound their way down a narrow trail lined on both sides with wild ground vine growth. Mosses and various species of fern grew over the rocks and up the trees. The sun shined greenish through the canopy of leaves above. They were on the other side of the world now. Animals filled the trees with their calls and singing. It reminded him a bit of the ambient music at the Opportunity Center, but far less annoying. The animals had their small agendas too, but at least they did not involve him. Nature, Rivers said, the final resort of everyone trying to cure depression since time out of mind. And exercise. Don't forget exercise. Maybe you should be in comedy instead, Doctor. We're almost there. They stepped out of the thicker portions of the natural scene. Nature did not vanish, but it did share space with the restored streets and buildings of the ruins of a past city. Robots hovered over statues, walls, and old cars that they cleaned and restored. Of course, the growth had been trimmed back, but not completely. Curated moss, vines, and trees were allowed to intermix among the abandoned buildings. Are there people working among these robots as well? River asked. Various sites around the world, yes, but not this one. We are alone with the caretakers, the natural world, and our past. Is this to show me what I'm missing out on in the cities? Absolutely not. The past is beautiful in our society. Everything we've accomplished, I'm going to put a comma there, is built upon these foundations from which the first advances were made. Very well, River said Very well, River stared at the ground between his feet. Weren't these places ravaged by war? I'm going to put a question mark there. Certainly, there are sites on the other side of the city that preserve some of the ancient war damage. Is that what I meant to learn today? There's no trick here, River. I thought this might offer an opportunity to step away and think. There's no pressure to follow any path you don't desire, but I have a sense that a lot of what is being offered to you now is coming across as noise. You can't seem to sort it all because it is too much all at once. You can spend time in a place like this. You'll still be part of our society, but maybe you'll get a chance to think without all the noise. River did think for a moment. He turned his face up into the warm sunshine. The more distant animal noises drifted out from the thicker woods. What would I do here? Anything you want, anything you need. What if I decide to break things? Well, then we'd enter a different sort of therapy with fewer options for a period of time. River rolled his eyes. So I'd play caretaker, curator, for a while. You can, if you want to occupy your time, or you can just explore inside and out for now. I already have a caretaker's apartment set up here for as long as you might want to stay, or you're free to leave whenever. What are you going to do? Leave you alone for a while, but I'll be there as soon as you are ready to resume, as early as tomorrow if this doesn't suit you. River sighed, but then said, I might stay a while. Are you going? I'll leave the transport for you where we landed. You can call me if you need something sooner. Okay, he said, and nodded, and then repeated, okay. Dr. Caslin's hologram split into multiple colors, and then she was gone, leaving River with the quiet city and the bots. One of them approached, and instead of speaking, it indicated on his screen that it could show him to his quarters. River waved the device off for the time being and decided to do a little exploring.